No one ever noticed the strange way time moved in Windmere Hollow. The town's children spoke of clocks that chimed at the wrong hour and a lingering mist that never quite lifted from the cobblestone streets. Most dismissed it as folklore, but those who remembered the Bellamy family, especially the vanished clockmaker, whispered stories behind closed doors. They said his clocks didn't just measure time, they altered it. On the edge of this forgotten town stood a crooked little shop tucked between ivy-covered buildings, its dusty window bearing the faded gold letters, Bellamy's Timepieces. The door hadn't opened in over a decade, not since the night the clockmaker disappeared, not since the ticking stopped. Thaddeus Bellamy stood in front of the shop now, 17 years old, heart hammering against his ribs. His fingers trembled as he pulled a tarnished brass key from his satchel. He had dreamed of this place for years, nightmares mostly, wheels turning in blood, clocks with screaming faces, his father's voice echoing through empty hallways. But he had to know. He had to see it for himself. The key slid into the lock with unnatural ease. The door creaked open, releasing a breath of cold air that smelled of oil, parchment, and something older, something like forgotten rain. Inside, the shop looked untouched. Dozens of clocks lined the walls, ticking in maddening disharmony. Each one displayed a different time. Dust blanketed the counters like snow, except for one small patch in the center of the workbench, clean as though someone had touched it recently. A spherical object sat there. A brass orb no bigger than an apple, carved with unfamiliar glyphs. It pulsed with a faint blue glow. Thaddeus reached out, heart in his throat. The moment his fingers brushed it, the world fell away. Time collapsed. He was no longer standing in the shop. He was suspended in a void filled with light and sound, a tunnel of memories and moments, spiraling infinitely. He saw himself at every age, saw his sister Elsie crying beside a shattered clock, saw his father forging something in fire and shadow. Then he was falling through hours, through years, through echoes of choices never made. When he woke, the shop was silent. All the clocks had stopped. Elsie stood in the doorway, her face pale. She hadn't seen him in 3 days. He'd only been gone for seconds. They spent that night digging through their father's hidden journals, tucked beneath loose floorboards and disguised as ledgers. Inside were diagrams of impossible machines, drawings of celestial bodies orbiting clockwork cores, and endless entries about the rewinder, a device their father had discovered, not built. It was ancient, alive. It fed on time like a parasite and granted glimpses of past or future in return, but always at a cost. Each page revealed more secrets, more warnings. Their father had made a deal with something that existed outside of time, something that called itself the Keeper beneath the veil. It had offered him knowledge in exchange for a single promise, to never destroy the rewinder, but Thaddeus had already touched it, activated it, and now it was awake. The ticking returned, not from the clocks, but from the walls, from inside their bones. Thaddeus began to see symbols etched into the wood, pulsing like veins. He had visions of black towers and blood-moon skies, of children frozen mid-laugh, and of the rewinder's gear turning slower than time itself. One night the workbench glowed with blue fire, and a man appeared, tall, familiar. It was their father, unaged, unchanged, but not alive. He spoke of echoes, of being trapped in a fracture of time, unable to return fully. He warned them that the rewinder's awakening would draw the Keeper back, and it would demand payment. A soul bound to the Bellamy bloodline, one of them. Then he vanished in a whirl of sparks and silence. Thaddeus and Elsie argued. She wanted to destroy the machine, to bury the shop in salt and forget everything. Thaddeus couldn't. Something in him pulsed with it now. He could hear time itself like a song, see seconds ripple in puddles. He'd started finishing other people's sentences before they said them. One afternoon, he caught a falling book before it tipped, before it even moved. The machine wasn't just waking up, it was merging with him. The more he tried to resist, the stronger the pull. The rewinder began activating on its own, opening fissures in the walls where voices whispered his name. Sometimes he walked through them by accident and ended up in moments that hadn't happened yet, or worse, moments that had, but wrong. In one, Elsie was gone. In another, the shop was burned to the ground. Then came the dream of the keyhole moon. In it, Thaddeus stood before a massive silver door, floating in blackness, surrounded by broken timepieces and frozen stars. The door pulsed like a heartbeat. Behind it, something knocked 3 times, then a voice. "The loop is incomplete. Choose your hour." He woke clutching a blackened gear, too heavy for its size. Its teeth turned without touching anything. When he showed it to Elsie, she stepped back in fear. "That's not from this world," she whispered. They weren't alone anymore. The next morning, the shop's air felt thicker, heavy with an unspoken warning. Thaddeus noticed that the hands on the grandfather clock behind the counter were slowly turning in reverse. Not quickly, not chaotically, deliberately, as if time itself were retracing its steps. He placed his hand on the wood, and the moment his skin touched the clock's frame, images flooded his mind again. Visions of streets that no longer existed, people long dead walking through Windmere Hollow like it was still 1884. He stumbled back, gasping. Elsie was outside, chalk in hand, etching symbols from their father's journal onto the cobblestones around the shop. A circle, a ward, a protection of sorts. She believed the machine could be contained, but Thaddeus already knew the truth. The rewinder didn't want to be contained. It wanted to be completed. The machine had always been missing a component, the black gear. Now that Thaddeus had found it in his dream and brought it back to the waking world, the rewinder's heartbeat grew louder with each passing hour. The shop itself seemed to pulse with it, breathing through the walls. Mice had fled. The clocks now ticked in harmony, perfectly synchronized in reverse. That night, thunder cracked over Windmere Hollow, though no storm could be seen. The sky split in a jagged line above the clock shop, revealing a glimpse of something else, a swirling eye of stormlight and shadow peering through dimensions. No one in the town noticed. No one except for an old woman standing on the opposite end of the street. She wore mourning black and a veil over her face, but her voice carried through the rainless wind like a bell toll. "You've turned the first wheel, boy," she said. "You cannot stop the others now." Thaddeus ran into the street, but she was gone. Not vanished, reversed. A puff of her existence sucked backward into itself, like smoke being unlit. He told Elsie, who grew paler by the hour. She began sewing protective charms into her clothes, lacing her tea with herbs meant to ward off spirits. She painted mirrors black and whispered to shadows. But Thaddeus, he no longer feared it. Something inside him had accepted it. A deep, ancient part. The dreams returned, stronger, more vivid. In one, he stood before a version of himself, but older, scarred, and wearing a clockmaker's coat woven from threads of time itself. His double whispered, "There's always a loop. The only way out is through." He awoke, clutching a timepiece that didn't belong to him. It showed 13 hours. The 13th hand ticked backward, pointing to nothing. By the 3rd day, the townspeople began to act strange. Mrs. Kettle, the baker, served bread that bled when cut. Mr. Goresby, the gravedigger, started digging up graves instead of filling them. Children laughed in unison, perfectly timed, like a music box playing an eerie lullaby. Windmere Hollow had begun slipping out of alignment with time itself. And it was Thaddeus's doing. The rewinder had fused to him. Not physically, but existentially. He could now feel threads of people's lives, their choices, their regrets, their turning points. He began to see time not as a river, but as a tangle of strings, some glowing, some frayed. That night, while Elsie slept surrounded by salt lines and protective symbols, Thaddeus stepped into the shop alone. He opened the rewinder's glass casing and inserted the black gear. The machine whirred to life, not loudly, but with a whispering elegance, like a predator exhaling after a long sleep. Then the door appeared. It wasn't a real door. It shimmered on the wall between two clocks, light bending around its frame. The same silver door from his dream, the keyhole moon etched into its surface. This time, the knocking came from this side. 3 sharp knocks. He hesitated, then opened it. Beyond lay nothing and everything. A corridor of memory, stretching infinitely, filled with versions of himself, some happy, others broken, some monsters, some corpses. He stepped forward. Each footfall echoed with choices he hadn't made. In one room, he saw himself hugging his father goodbye at age 9. In another, he was a child soldier in a timeline where the world ended in fire. Further still, he saw a version of Elsie weeping over his grave. The corridor shifted, and he began running, past doors, past warnings, past futures, until he reached the end. A circular room, a clock-face ceiling, and standing in its center, cloaked in robes of ink and starfire, the keeper beneath the veil. It had no face, only a moving mask of time itself, seconds ticking, reversing, pausing, shifting like mercury. Its voice echoed across realities. "You have awakened the loom," it said. "The weave is broken. The Bellamy blood must pay its debt." Thaddeus dropped to his knees. "Take me, not her." The keeper tilted its head. "You offer a fragment, not the whole. The machine is incomplete still. The heart remains hidden." Thaddeus whispered, "What heart?" The keeper extended a long finger and pointed to Elsie. He screamed. The corridor collapsed. Thaddeus awoke, gasping, the echoes of the collapsing corridor still ringing in his ears. The floorboards beneath him were damp with sweat, or was it something else? The ticking of the clocks had grown frantic now, no longer reversed, but spiraling in loops of irregular rhythm. The rewinder stood still, its black gear humming with dormant energy. Elsie was gone. He raced upstairs, calling her name, but her bed was empty, her charms shattered on the floor, salt lines smeared. Window open, no sign of a struggle, only the lingering scent of lavender, and on her pillow, a gear, silver, smooth, with her name etched in the center. He held it in trembling hands. The heart remains hidden. He finally understood. The rewinder wasn't powered by metal alone. It fed on memory, sacrifice, bloodlines. It needed more than gears. It needed them. Thaddeus stumbled out into the street. Windmere Hollow was dissolving. Buildings flickered in and out of time. 1 second, the blacksmith's shop was a ruin. The next, it was freshly built, smoke rising from its chimney. People walked in reverse, then forward, then simply vanished into dust. And there, in the town square, was the door again, the silver door. This time it stood wide open. He stepped through. The world beyond was a liminal mirror of Windmere Hollow, draped in shadow, washed in a palette of indigo and memory. Ghosts of the town wandered here, echoes of people he once knew, now locked in repeating moments. A child fell off her bicycle again and again. A mother reached for a son who would never return. And then he saw Elsie. She was standing on the edge of a massive clock face, floating above a chasm of stars and gears. Her hands were bound in golden thread, her eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. Above her loomed the keeper. Its robes were unfurling now, revealing a body made of time itself, bones of sundials, veins of pocket watches, and a heart that ticked once every few minutes. "You returned," it said. Thaddeus stepped forward. "Let her go. She is the spark, the one who remembers all. She is the cost." "No," Thaddeus said, pulling the black gear from his pocket. "This is the cost. Take it. Take me." The keeper turned, silent. Then it laughed. "You still do not see. The machine was never meant to be fixed. It was meant to unravel. Your family were the weavers. You are the severer." The clock face beneath them began to crack. Elsie opened her eyes. "Thaddeus, run!" But it was too late. The floor shattered and he fell, down through memory, through dreams, through every path not taken. As he plummeted, he saw his father, hunched at his workbench, whispering, "I only wanted to save her. I didn't know the price." Then blackness swallowed him whole. Thaddeus awoke not in the clockmaker's shop, not in Windmere Hollow, but somewhere else entirely. A cavern of ticking silence surrounded him. Above, the sky was a dome of spinning constellations shaped like clock hands. Below, he lay on a bed of forgotten memories, broken watches, dusty journals, faded toys, and shards of childhood dreams. It smelled like mothballs and candle wax. Somewhere a music box was playing. Backward, he stood, disoriented, clutching the silver gear with Elsie's name. But now it pulsed faintly in his palm, warm, like a heartbeat. With every tick, a voice echoed in his mind. "You are the severer. You cut the past from the present to protect the future." He didn't know what that meant, but he felt it. Deep in his blood, in the bone-marrow echo of his ancestors' choices, a light flickered to his right. A familiar voice whispered, "Thaddeus." He turned. It was his mother, or the shadow of her. She stood across a narrow bridge made of chains and whispering memories, her face half lit by the glow of a massive gear-shaped moon. She wore the amulet his father had kept locked away, the same one Thaddeus had never dared to open. "Why didn't you come home?" he choked. "I tried," she replied, her voice fragile. "But your father trapped time, and I became part of the cost." "You're dead?" he asked, his voice cracking. She nodded slowly. "And alive, lost in the machine's echo. But your sister, she still has a chance." "Where is she?" The chains beneath him groaned. "She's in the core," his mother said, pointing to the glowing spire at the edge of the starless horizon, "where the rewinder's thread begins and ends." He took a step, but the chains shivered. "Be warned," she said. "Each step forward will cost you a memory, a true one. You won't know which until it's gone." Thaddeus clenched his jaw. "If that's the price, I'll pay it." He stepped forward. A searing pain flooded his chest, and he forgot the sound of his father's laugh. Another step. The smell of cinnamon and ink, his childhood bedroom, gone. Third step. His first kiss. Her name vanished. By the time he reached the spire, tears streamed silently down his cheeks. He couldn't even remember why he cried, only that someone named Elsie was in danger. And then, at the door to the core, the keeper waited once more. But this time, it wasn't a towering shadow. It was a mirror. And in the mirror, Thaddeus saw himself, aged, broken, gears embedded in his chest, time pouring from his eyes. The future. "You cannot save her," the mirror keeper said. "You can only become me." Thaddeus raised the black gear. "Then let me begin." The door cracked open with a sound like 1,000 clocks dying, and Thaddeus stepped into the core. What he saw inside would haunt him for the rest of his unraveling life. The core was not a room. It was a memory engine, a living mechanism made of forgotten moments, pulsing in golden light and shadows. Massive gears turned in the air without support, suspended in an unseen rhythm. Whispering voices filled the space. Some were familiar. Others were too old to belong to anyone still alive. Thaddeus stepped inside. His breath misted. Every tick of the core's great heart sent ripples through reality. Time didn't just move here, it bled, dripping down the walls like ink from an ancient quill. In the center of it all, suspended above a pillar of glass, was Elsie, unmoving, eyes closed. Golden threads wrapped her entire body like a cocoon, each connected to a clock, each counting down. He ran toward her, but the moment he moved, the whispers became screams. The floor cracked, and from the shadows something emerged. It looked like a man once, but no longer. His skin was faded like an old photograph. One eye ticked like a metronome. His voice creaked like rusted hinges. You were never meant to arrive this far, Thaddeus. Who are you? Thaddeus demanded, fists clenched around the black gear. I'm what remains when the machine wins, the figure said. I was once your grandfather. No, he died in a fire. He was the fire, the old man hissed. He built the rewinder, fed it with lives, and passed the burden to your father, and now to you. Thaddeus shook his head, backing away. No, I'm going to break it. I'll destroy the core. I'll free Elsie. The old man only smiled. You could, if she weren't the one keeping it alive. Silence. What? Elsie is not just caught in the machine. She's the machine now. Her mind threads time together. You destroy the core, and you destroy her. The glass below cracked with each tick. Thaddeus dropped to his knees, hands in his hair. There has to be another way. There isn't, the old man said. You either save her and trap the world in time forever, or let her go and set time free. A countdown appeared on the glass. Lord 2, 59, Lord 2, 58. Thaddeus stared at his sister, glowing, calm, smiling in her dreams. The black gear trembled in his hand. He stepped forward and raised it toward the core. The countdown froze at 0010. The core's light dimmed. A voice, her voice, echoed in his mind. It's okay, Thaddeus. I remember enough for both of us. Let me go. He screamed, and the screen went black. Thaddeus stood alone in the black silence of the core. The countdown had stopped at 0010, but everything else was still. Elsie floated in her golden cocoon, peaceful. The shattered voice of his mother no longer whispered. The ghost of his grandfather had vanished into dust. In his palm, the black gear pulsed like a second heart. He had 1 minute to choose. Destroy the core and lose Elsie forever, or keep her alive and trap time in an endless cycle. He looked up at her, the girl who used to steal the last piece of toast, who once carved her name into his compass, who cried when he fell off the roof trying to impress her. Now, she was the heartbeat of the world. Tears welled in his eyes. I don't want to lose you. But Elsie's voice echoed gently from the walls. You already did, Thad, but what matters is what you do now. He closed his eyes, breathed in, and placed the black gear into the heart of the core. The room screamed, time fractured, memories rushed past him in a blur. Birthdays, storms, laughter, funerals, first love, last words, all of it spinning faster, reversing, untangling. The glass cracked. The golden threads unwound from Elsie, disintegrating mid-air, and then silence. Everything stopped. Not the ticking of time, not the hum of the machine. Everything. Thaddeus stood in stillness. The world around him looked frozen. No movement, no breath. The walls of the core melted away, revealing an empty sky filled with stars that had never existed before. Elsie stood across from him, whole, real, smiling. Is it over? He asked. She nodded. But so are we. What do you mean? She stepped forward and touched his hand. This world was never meant to last. The Clockmaker didn't build it to preserve time. He built it to end it when the burden became too heavy. Thaddeus looked down. His hand was fading, his fingers turned to dust. You broke the loop, Thad. You freed the world. But we were part of the loop. Elsie kissed his cheek, warm and real. I'm proud of you, she whispered, and then she vanished. One by one, stars blinked out in the sky. Thaddeus turned to see the shop where it all began, the old gears, the ticking clocks, the smell of pine wood. The door creaked open. A little boy walked in, wide-eyed, curious, alone. On the table, a silver compass spun. The boy picked it up. It glowed faintly, engraved with the name Elsie, and somewhere far beyond the ticking of time, the whisper of the Clockmaker echoed again. Time is not meant to be kept, only remembered.